Have you ever stopped to think who will really take care of you in your old age? Many of us, without realizing it, imagine that our children will be there, ready to offer support and love when we need it most. But what if this expectation is wrong? What if, by depending on our children, we are making one of the biggest mistakes of our lives? Get ready, because this video will change your perspective on aging, revealing why depending on your children can cost much more than we imagine. We will explore real stories and bring surprising data that will make you re-evaluate your choices for the future. So stay until the end and discover how to guarantee a safer and more dignified old age. You won't want to miss this chance to understand what really matters. And before continuing, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, leave a like and activate the bell so you don't miss any content like this. It is common to imagine that our children will be by our side supporting us when old age arrives, but this belief, however comforting it may be, may not correspond to reality. Modern life brings challenges, intense routines, and the search for independence, creating a distance that makes it difficult for many children to take full care of their parents. Many elderly people discover, often too late, that total dependence on their children can generate conflicts and disappointments, both for them and their children. Given this, the question remains, is it really safe and sensible to rely only on our children as our security plan for old age? By relying exclusively on the expectation that our children will take care of all our needs in old age, we can place ourselves in a position of emotional and even financial vulnerability. The impact of disappointment can be devastating, especially for those who come to depend on their children for care and companionship. Even though family relationships are based on love and trust, relying solely on children can overwhelm them, leading to feelings of guilt and frustration. This creates a situation in which family harmony is threatened by expectations that cannot always be met in practice. Therefore, planning alternatives that guarantee our independence may be the best decision to preserve both the family bond and our own dignity and autonomy. By investing in our own well-being and seeking out forms of support that don't overwhelm our children, we are also showing them that we value independence and planning. Building an autonomous old age allows us to live with peace of mind and avoids the burden of dependence that can often undermine family ties instead of strengthening them. Many parents assume that after years of dedication and care, it is natural to expect their children to reciprocate this support in old age. However, this expectation, however understandable it may be, can turn into an emotional trap that impacts the lives of the entire family. When children are unable to meet their parents' demands, whether due to personal, financial, or geographic limitations, the family relationship is profoundly affected. This situation can generate frustration, misunderstandings, and even resentment, leaving parents feeling helpless and disappointed. The reality is that children often face challenges of their own that make their role as full-time caregivers difficult. By ignoring these circumstances and expecting their children to assume full responsibility, many parents end up subjecting family ties to an emotional endurance test that can strain the relationship. Excessive dependence on children brings a significant emotional burden, both for parents who see their expectations unmet and for children who feel pressured and guilty for not being able to live up to their parents' needs. To avoid this negative dynamic, it is essential that parents become aware of the importance of planning for their own old age, considering support alternatives that do not depend exclusively on their children. Investing in resources such as pensions, planned housing, or professional support networks can help preserve the autonomy and dignity of parents, in addition to keeping family ties free from demands. When parents take a proactive role in caring for their own health and well-being, they show their children the importance of independence and self-care, reducing the risk of conflict and ensuring a more harmonious relationship in old age. Dependence on children in old age involves costs that go far beyond finances and deeply affect the emotions of everyone involved. For parents, this dependence brings a feeling of loss of control and dignity, as failing to be self-sufficient can generate feelings of inferiority and even depression. For children, on the other hand, taking on the role of caregiver brings intense pressure, which affects their emotional state, their routine, and their own life projects. This invisible weight is often ignored, but it has a cumulative impact that can be destructive to family relationships. The emotional overload that dependence brings often generates resentment and exhaustion, with children feeling trapped in an obligation that, even though it is justified by love, consumes their time and energy in an exhausting way. This burden, which begins subtly, ends up growing over time, and many children realize too late that they are sacrificing part of their personal life to meet their parents' needs. This reality makes caregiving an exhausting task, putting the family bond to the test and generating a sense of guilt in children who want to help but end up feeling overwhelmed. The search for alternatives that guarantee parental independence can alleviate this burden, preserving both the emotional health of children and the autonomy of parents. By recognizing the negative impact of addiction, families can work together to find solutions, such as financial planning and seeking support services. These measures allow children to take on a supportive role, but without compromising their own lives and projects. Thus, family relationships can be strengthened based on respect and mutual care, avoiding the emotional exhaustion that excessive dependence causes. For many children, caring for their parents in old age is an act of love and gratitude, but this responsibility comes with a profound dilemma. Between the desire to return the affection received and the weight of an obligation that is often difficult to manage, children face a silent conflict that affects their emotional health and well-being. The pressure to balance caring for parents with their own lives is a challenge that can strain the relationship and lead to the development of feelings of guilt and frustration. This dilemma is particularly intense for those who, as much as they want to be present, need to deal with the demands of work, family, and even financial issues. The desire to help is true, but reality imposes barriers that are not always easy to overcome. Thus, care becomes a task that generates emotional exhaustion, especially when the child feels that he is sacrificing important aspects of his own life. This conflict between love and obligation is one of the main factors that lead to emotional separation between parents and children in old age. To deal with this challenge, it is essential that parents and children discuss the possibilities and limitations that involve care in old age. Seeking solutions such as professional support, financial planning, and even support from friends and the community can help ease the burden on children and preserve the emotional bond. By recognizing that love does not always translate into an absolute obligation, families can find healthier ways to support each other where affection and respect are prioritized without care becoming an unbearable burden. Parents' dependence on their children has a significant emotional impact on both, which can result in feelings of loss of autonomy, frustration, and even resentment. For parents, losing the ability to care for themselves and needing help from their children is a difficult process to accept, as it involves a loss of dignity and a change in the role they have always played in the family. This feeling of incapacity often results in low self-esteem, and in some cases, even depression, as the elderly feel that they have become a burden to their loved ones. For children, on the other hand, the responsibility of caring for their parents can be an exhausting emotional burden, especially when they have to balance this demand with their own lives, responsibilities, and commitments. The pressure of taking on this role of caregiver can generate stress, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion, undermining the relationship between parents and children. Many children end up feeling overwhelmed and guilty because, despite wanting to help, Their parents' dependence interferes with their own health and quality of life. This silent emotional impact is one of the reasons why family dependence in old age must be analyzed with care and planning. To minimize the negative emotional effects of dependence, it is important that parents consider alternatives that allow them to maintain their autonomy and preserve their children's well-being. Planning for old age to ensure independence with the help of support services and support networks can ease the emotional burden on children and prevent family relationships from deteriorating. Open communication about limitations and expectations on both sides is essential to building a healthy relationship. Where support is mutual and family love is preserved without care becoming an unsustainable burden. Taking on the role of caregiver for their parents is a responsibility that many children see as an inevitable duty, but the reality of this task goes beyond what most imagine. Parenting requires daily sacrifices, time and energy, and over time, this responsibility can become an invisible burden that consumes children's lives. This emotional toll is not always evident at first, but as the challenges mount, many children find themselves overwhelmed and trapped in an obligation that affects their emotional, physical, and social health. The strain caused by the task of caring for parents is reflected in different aspects of children's lives, from physical exhaustion to the impact on their career, personal life, and relationships. Many children end up ignoring their own limits to meet their parents' needs, which can result in a cycle of stress and frustration that harms both the children's health and the relationship with their parents. This invisible burden, which begins as a commitment based on love, ends up becoming a source of suffering and emotional exhaustion for the entire family. To deal with this load in a healthy way, it is essential that children and parents recognize each other's limitations and look for ways to share responsibility. Relying on support services and support networks can help alleviate the burden on children, allowing them to continue being present and loving children, but without giving up their own lives and well-being. By balancing the task of caring with the search for support, families can strengthen their bonds and face this phase of life in a lighter and more harmonious way. Many stories of parents who relied exclusively on their children to care for them in old age ended in disappointment. For many seniors, the transition to living with their children may seem like the natural path, but prolonged cohabitation can bring unforeseen challenges and frustrations. An example is the case of Mrs. Amber, who decided to move into her daughter's house after losing her husband. At first, it seemed like the ideal solution, with daily company and assistance. However, over time, Amber began to feel like an outsider as she realized that her needs and habits didn't fit into her daughter's family dynamic. This situation is common and shows how often plans for coexistence between parents and children do not correspond to initial expectations. For Amber's daughter, taking on the role of caregiver began to take a toll on her own responsibilities and personal life. The mother's constant presence brought pressure and emotional demands, creating tension that undermined the family relationship. Amber, in turn, began to experience feelings of guilt and sadness, seeing herself as a burden to her daughter. This cycle of frustration is a reality for many families who have not planned independent care alternatives. Cases like Amber's show us the importance of considering alternative options for care in old age, preserving both the emotional health of parents and children. Seeking solutions such as financial planning, support communities for seniors and professional support can avoid disappointment and keep family relationships healthy and balanced. Investing in parental independence is a way of ensuring that this phase of life is lived with dignity and respect, without the burden of coexistence becoming a source of suffering for both parties. The transition from an independent life to being dependent on children is one of the most difficult challenges faced by the elderly. For many, this change represents a significant loss of control over their own lives, and the need to ask for help with everyday activities can profoundly affect self-esteem. Losing autonomy means, for many, also losing their sense of identity and dignity, which can lead to feelings of depression and anxiety. This process is especially painful for those who have been independent throughout their lives and suddenly find themselves in a vulnerable position. The infantilization that occurs when children start to control their parents' decisions, such as schedules, food, and activities, is a common reality and has profound emotional impacts. Many elderly people feel helpless when they realize that they have lost their freedom of choice, and their relationship with their children is transformed, with them taking on the role of caregivers. This role reversal generates emotional conflicts and often ends up creating an environment of tension and frustration that impacts the mental health of parents. The lack of autonomy is a loss that affects the elderly in essence, and extreme dependence can reduce their quality of life. The search for alternatives that preserve autonomy, such as hiring caregivers, adapting housing, or joining a community for the elderly, is a way of maintaining the dignity of parents and preventing the relationship with their children from being damaged. By ensuring that the elderly have the freedom to make decisions and live according to their own preferences, it is possible to reduce the negative impacts of loss of autonomy. This strengthens family bonds, allowing children to remain supportive figures rather than controlling their parents' lives. Dignified aging is a goal that many strive for, and independence is essential for older people to preserve their self-esteem and emotional well-being. Being completely dependent on your children can affect this dignity, leading the elderly person to a situation of submission that compromises their quality of life. Autonomy, on the other hand, allows him to continue making decisions and living actively, with a routine that respects his choices. This independence, however small it may be, is a decisive factor in making the elderly person feel valued and fulfilled. The lack of autonomy leads many elderly people to experience feelings of uselessness and sadness, as dependence makes them feel like a burden to their children. Maintaining control over their own lives is essential for them to feel capable and fulfilled, regardless of their age. This dignity is built throughout life, and autonomy provides the security that they have value and purpose. Research shows that seniors who preserve their independence tend to have more balanced mental health and face fewer episodes of depression and anxiety. To preserve this autonomy, it is important that families encourage the elderly to maintain activities that give them meaning and pleasure, such as hobbies, friendship networks, and physical exercise. Alternatives such as financial planning and communities for the elderly are also ways to ensure that elderly people have the possibility to choose how they want to live without depending entirely on their children. The dignity of aging is directly linked to respect for these choices, and preserving autonomy is one of the greatest demonstrations of affection and respect that can be offered. The mental health of older people is profoundly affected by their ability to remain independent and make their own decisions. Having control over your own life provides emotional security, self-esteem, and a sense of accomplishment, which is essential for well-being in old age. When older people lose this independence, they become vulnerable to depression, anxiety, and feelings of isolation, as they become dependent on their children for activities they previously performed alone. For many older adults, addiction is a constant reminder that their capabilities have diminished, which affects their self-esteem and causes them to question their worth. This emotional impact is exacerbated when they realize that their lives are in other people's hands. Mental health, which depends on a stable routine and activities that provide pleasure, is compromised by the lack of autonomy. Studies indicate that elderly people who maintain an active and independent life have lower rates of depression and are able to face the challenges of aging with more resilience. Planning to ensure this independence is an essential measure to preserve mental health in old age. Alternatives such as hiring assistance services, financial planning, and involvement in social activities are ways of preserving autonomy. This care ensures that the elderly continue to live with dignity, feeling useful and capable, which strengthens their self-esteem and their desire to remain active and participate in their own destiny. Aging peacefully requires strategic planning that involves both financial and emotional aspects. For those who aspire to an independent old age, organizing resources and housing alternatives in advance is an essential step. Without adequate planning, independence can become an impossible challenge to achieve, and seniors end up burdening their children with needs that could have been avoided. Financial planning, such as creating an emergency fund and taking out insurance, allows elderly people to have the security they need to live without depending on third parties. In addition to the financial aspect, it is important to plan your emotional well-being and quality of life, considering how you want to live in old age. Having a support structure, cultivating friendship networks, and maintaining leisure activities are factors that contribute to a more balanced old age. When the elderly take control over these aspects, they preserve their autonomy and guarantee a full and dignified life. Planning offers the peace of mind of knowing that under any circumstances, they will be able to live freely and without financial worries that limit their choices. This planning also represents a way of relieving children of the responsibility of fully caring for their parents. When preparing for old age, the elderly ensure that their life will be lived according to their own decisions, without becoming a burden on the family. Planning is, therefore, an investment in one's own well-being and a way to build a peaceful and autonomous old age, where respect for oneself is valued and family ties are maintained with affection and harmony. Independence in old age has a cost that goes far beyond the financial. It requires emotional preparation, discipline, and commitment to one's own well-being. The financial cost, however, is a reality that must be considered, as it involves expenses with health, housing, food, and other basic survival items. Many elderly people underestimate these needs and end up turning to their children for help, which compromises their autonomy. To guarantee this independence, it is essential that the elderly have robust financial planning, capable of covering unforeseen events and maintaining a satisfactory quality of life. Investment in alternative housing, medical care, and leisure activities is essential to ensure that elderly people live a full and dignified life. The cost of living independently can be high, but it is a necessary choice for those who wish to preserve their autonomy and avoid excessive dependence on their children. Each resource allocated to this stage of life is an investment in mental health and emotional security, ensuring that the elderly do not feel like a burden and that they have the freedom to live as they wish. By choosing to invest in independence, the elderly are not only ensuring their comfort, but also preserving their relationship with their family. This cost, which may seem high at first, translates into benefits that go far beyond the financial, providing a more balanced and rewarding life. Living independently allows older adults to maintain their pride and dignity, knowing that their life is in their own hands and that they have the power to decide what is best for themselves. Getting older without adequate financial planning can turn old age into a phase of great challenges and unpleasant surprises. Many people don't anticipate how much the costs of healthcare, housing, and other necessities can grow over the years, and end up depending on their children's help to cover these expenses. This lack of planning places the elderly in a vulnerable position, as financial instability prevents them from maintaining autonomy and dignity in old age. Planning in advance, through savings and investments, is a way to guarantee a peaceful old age, where the elderly can decide their destiny without being forced to depend on third parties. In addition to basic costs, Many elderly people need housing adaptations and specialized medical care, which involve additional expenses. Without financial planning, these needs can overload the family budget and compromise the elderly's quality of life. Financial security is an essential factor in ensuring that he can live independently and comfortably without having to rely exclusively on the support of his children. Instead of an expense, financial planning should be seen as an investment in one's own freedom, as it prevents the elderly from experiencing situations of need or abandonment. Building a solid financial base also represents a relief for children who, knowing that their parents have their own resources, do not need to sacrifice their own projects and dreams to cover their expenses. The financial impact of old age is, therefore, a matter of responsibility and self-care, which must be addressed from an early age to avoid surprises. Well-done planning offers the elderly the peace of mind of knowing that their future is guaranteed and that they will be able to live this phase of life with dignity and autonomy, respecting both themselves and their children. The relationship between parents and children has undergone major changes over the generations, and expectations regarding care in old age reflect this transformation. In the past, it was common for several generations to live under the same roof, where caring for elderly parents was a natural part of family life. Today, however, families are more dispersed and the dynamics have changed, with many children living away from their parents due to professional and personal commitments. This physical and emotional distance creates an abyss of expectations and frustrations, where parents and children have different views about each other's role in old age. Many parents still expect that their children will take responsibility for their care, but modern reality, with the pressures of work and family life, makes this scenario almost impossible. Children, in turn, want to help, but feel overwhelmed by the need to balance their own lives with their parents' demands. This mismatch of expectations leads to disagreements and resentment, which can harm the family bond and create an environment of tension. The gap between generations, with parents expecting the presence and care of their children, and children unable to meet these expectations, is one of the main causes of family conflicts in old age. To overcome this gap, it is essential that parents and children align their expectations in a clear and realistic way. Frank dialogue about each person's limitations and possibilities allows both to understand the responsibilities and challenges involved in care. Recognizing that the current reality is different and that support from children can come in other ways, such as regular visits and emotional support, helps to build a more harmonious and healthy relationship. By understanding each other's needs and possibilities, parents and children are able to maintain a strong emotional bond without care becoming a source of frustration. The transformations in modern families have resulted in a reality in which many elderly people find themselves living alone, facing loneliness as one of the biggest challenges of old age. With the advancement of social mobility and changes in work dynamics, children often live in different cities or countries, making time together rare. Loneliness, which was previously minimized by the constant presence of family members, has become a frequent concern for the elderly, who find themselves isolated in a phase of life where human contact is fundamental to their well-being. Loneliness has significant effects on physical and emotional health, increasing the risk of depression, anxiety, and even heart disease. Many elderly people, when they find themselves isolated, lose interest in activities they previously enjoyed and begin to experience feelings of abandonment and sadness. The absence of a support and coexistence network makes old age a lonely and, in many cases, desolate period. This distancing from children, even if unintentional, profoundly affects the well-being of parents who would like to have the family's presence on a more constant basis. To combat loneliness, many elderly people have opted for alternatives such as community living and support groups, where they find a network of friends and activities that keep their mental and emotional health in balance. These communities provide an environment where seniors can interact and participate in social activities, minimizing the impact of loneliness. Building bonds of friendship, even outside the family nucleus, provides a sense of belonging and alleviates the need to always have children close by, allowing the elderly to live full and happy lives. The line between helping and controlling elderly parents is fine and often crossed unconsciously. When children assume responsibility for care, there is a risk that support turns into control, disrespecting the parents' autonomy and wishes. Making decisions about their routine and preferences without consulting them can make parents feel childish and even disrespected. This control, although well-intentioned, generates conflicts and harms the self-esteem of the elderly, who begin to feel that they have lost the right to decide about their own lives. This situation is particularly common when children, when taking on the role of caregivers, start to control daily aspects such as their parents' diet, schedules, and even leisure choices. For children, this behavior may seem like a way to ensure their parents' safety, but for the elderly, it represents a loss of autonomy that profoundly affects their dignity. When support becomes control, family relationships are negatively impacted as parents begin to resent the lack of freedom and the imposition of their children's wishes. To maintain a healthy relationship, it is important that children learn to offer help without interfering in their parents' decisions, allowing them to maintain their sense of independence. Dialogue is essential for parents to express their preferences and needs, and for children to respect these wishes when offering support. This balance between care and respect for autonomy allows parents to feel valued and confident, knowing that their children's support is a partnership and not an imposition. Caring for parents in old age is a concept that has been redefined as families adapt to the new dynamics of modern society. Care, previously seen as continuous coexistence between parents and children under the same roof, today takes different forms, with alternatives that respect the individuality of the elderly and the needs of their children. Today, caring means more than just being physically present, is to offer emotional support, financial support, and alternatives that allow parents to live autonomously and independently. This new vision of care involves the understanding that the elderly also want to maintain their freedom and independence, and that the love and dedication of children can manifest themselves in different ways. Many children, when redefining the role of caregivers, look for ways to ensure that their parents have a dignified life, without this meaning abandoning their own responsibilities and dreams. This redefinition of care allows children to be present in their parents' lives in a balanced way, providing support without the relationship overloaded by the obligation. This new perspective brings benefits to both parents and children, who can maintain a healthier and without excessive charges. The appreciation of parents' autonomy, combined with the necessary support, represents an evolution in the concept of care, where respect for individuality and the freedom of the elderly is prioritized. With this redefinition, care becomes a support partnership, where love is expressed in respect for choices and commitment to preserve parents' dignity in old age. Communication is the basis for a healthy relationship, especially in old age, when the needs and expectations of parents and children can conflict. Establishing clear limits and realistic expectations is essential to avoid misunderstandings and frustrations. When parents and children talk openly about what each one expects and can offer, both become more aware of the responsibilities and challenges involved in care, strengthening the relationship and promoting a mutual respect environment. For children, understanding how far they can commit without harming their own life is a crucial point in building a healthy relationship with parents. Similarly, parents need to accept that their children have their own limitations and that in many cases they cannot be present at all times. This understanding is fundamental to avoid the pressure and resentment that arise when expectations are not met. Open communication, coupled with respect for one's limits, helps to establish a harmonious coexistence free of excessive charges. When the limits are respected, family relationships are strengthened, as parents and children can offer support without care becoming a weight. This balanced relationship allows love and affection to be expressed genuinely, without the need to sacrifice the will and autonomy of each. Building a relationship based on communication and limits is a way of ensuring that old age is lived with dignity, where family support is a conscious choice and not an imposition. Over time, many older people find that living in a planned community for their needs can offer much more than just a place to live. These communities for the elderly are created to provide support, social activities, and healthcare in an environment that promotes independence and coexistence. Instead of living isolated, these spaces allow the elderly to build new relationships, participate in physical and cultural activities, and find daily company, which fights loneliness and improves their quality of life. These communities offer an environment where autonomy is respected, and each resident is encouraged to maintain their routines and hobbies. Many seniors report that by living in a community they feel that they found a new sense of youth and freedom, with the opportunity to make new friends and discover interests that they had not explored before. Unlike traditional nursing homes, communities for the elderly provide a dynamic and stimulating space where activities are designed to promote physical and mental well-being and include the family at important times. For many, living in a community for the elderly represents a new beginning, a second opportunity to live in full and active way. This lifestyle not only fights loneliness, but also strengthens the mental and emotional health of the elderly, who feel belonging and respected. As they choose this solution, they preserve their independence, avoid family conflicts, and get enjoying a quiet old age and full of significant moments. Living in a community, therefore, can be an effective way to ensure a rich and full social life, where the elderly maintain control of their choices and strengthen their support networks. In old age, many elderly people realize that support ties do not need to be limited only to family members of blood. The so-called elected families have become an important alternative for those looking for company, support, and emotional security. These ties are formed between friends, neighbors, or even members of interest groups, and can become as strong as biological ties. This type of relationship offers a new emotional and practical support network that complements or even replaces the presence of the biological family in times of need. Elected families bring a new perspective on aging, where the elderly choose with those who want to share their journey. The creation of ties with people who share interests and values strengthens the sense of belonging and combat loneliness, promoting more active and happy old age. Many elderly people feel empowered by building these relationships, as they know they can count on people close to those who have affinities and emotional reciprocity. This support is essential to facing the challenges of age, offering company and protection in difficult times. The possibility of forming a chosen family brings freedom and autonomy to the elderly, allowing them to maintain a strong and genuine support network. These ties strengthen mental and emotional health as they create an environment of acceptance and mutual trust. Having an elected family means having a social structure that helps preserve dignity and well-being, showing that support and affection not only depend on blood ties, but on significant connections that we can create and cultivate throughout life. Technology has become a powerful ally for the elderly who seek to preserve their independence and stay connected to the world. Tools such as health applications, social networks, and welfare monitoring devices allow the elderly to continue managing their routine and facilitating contact with distant family and friends. This access to technology brings a new sense of freedom, as it offers alternatives for health monitoring and communication, which previously depended on third parties to be made possible. For many seniors, the use of technology represents a new learning, a challenge that motivates them to remain active and updated. Applications that help remember medication hours, mark medical appointments and monitor blood pressure, for example, ensure that the elderly can feel safe and self-sufficient. In addition, social networks are a valuable resource to combat solitude, as they allow them to communicate with friends and family and even make new friends, expanding their support network. Technology, by promoting the autonomy of the elderly, strengthens mental and emotional health, ensuring that they feel active and connected. With the help of technological devices, it is possible to maintain a vibrant social life and face the challenges of age more safely. By adopting technology as an ally, the elderly not only preserve their independence, but also show the next generations that aging can be a full phase, where learning and adaptation remains present. The search for autonomy in old age is a legitimate desire that represents the basis of a decent life. For many, this independence is the key to living according to their own choices and to maintain self-esteem at a time of life when limitations begin to emerge. Investing in a dignified old age means planning the future so that the elderly preserve their freedom and can decide how and where they want to live. This preparation involves the care of finances, health, and even the adaptation of the home so that it can live safely and comfortably. To ensure this autonomy, many elderly people organize themselves financially and make conscious choices about their housing and health care. Financial planning, including economies, social security and health insurance, is a way to avoid excessive dependence on children and preserve freedom. Investment in the adaptation of home and hiring support services is also a way to ensure that the elderly continue to live independently. These decisions are fundamental to prevent old age from becoming a period of deprivation and ensuring that it maintains its quality of life. Autonomy is one of the greatest gifts that the elderly can be, as it allows them to live with dignity and respect, preserving their pride and their identity. This investment in freedom is, in fact, an investment in one's own happiness and well-being, as it allows the elderly to face old age with confidence and optimism. Seeking autonomy is a way of ensuring that old age is a full phase, where the elderly live according to their own wills, without becoming a weight to others and maintaining their dignity intact. Physical and mental activity is one of the pillars for healthy and rewarding old age. Staying active means much more than just taking care of the body. It also involves the constant stimulus of the mind, the preservation of hobbies and social interaction. For many elderly, this routine of activities provides a sense of utility and accomplishment, which is essential for mental health. Exercise, cultivation of interests, and participation in social groups help prevent diseases such as depression and Alzheimer's and increase the quality of life. The importance of mental activity in old age goes beyond preserving cognitive functions. Reading, solving puzzles, and learning something new, such as an instrument or a language, are activities that help keep the brain active and face the aging process positively. The search for new experiences, even in old age, provides a sense of vitality and gives the elderly the feeling that he still has much to learn and discover, reinforcing self-esteem and well-being. Socially, staying active is a way to prevent isolation and strengthen the support network. Participating in activities, clubs, and cultural meetings allows the elderly to share their experiences and exchange experiences, which fights loneliness and promotes a sense of belonging. Active life is the secret to a healthy mind, as it allows the elderly to feel valued and self-sufficient, facing each day with disposition and joy. Often asking for help is seen as a sign of weakness, but it is actually a demonstration of strength and intelligence. In old age, knowing when to ask for help is essential to preserve their own autonomy, as it allows the elderly to remain independent, but with the necessary support to face the challenges. Recognize their own limitations and accept the support of family, friends, or professionals. Do not compromise autonomy. On the contrary, it shows that the elderly are committed to their safety and well-being. Asking for help in a balanced way is a way to maintain quality of life without overloading children or family. For many elderly, this help can mean a simple orientation in the daily routine, or a help for specific tasks such as home maintenance. Accepting this support allows the elderly to continue living independently, knowing that in times of need, they can count on the support of those nearby. At the same time, it preserves its autonomy and prevents dependence from becoming an emotional weight. Knowing how to ask for help is a valuable ability that promotes a healthy relationship between the elderly and their loved ones. This balance between autonomy and interdependence ensures that the elderly feel safe and self-sufficient, preserving their dignity. When asking for help, it is done naturally and respectfully. The elderly feel strengthened and confident, maintaining a mutual support relationship that benefits everyone involved. More than material inheritance, many elderly seek to leave an emotional legacy that inspires the next generations. Living an independent and decent old age is a way of teaching children and grandchildren the value of freedom and self-care. In planning their lives autonomously, the elderly show that respect for themselves is fundamental, and that the elderly can be a full and rewarding phase. This emotional legacy is a valuable heritage that goes beyond material goods and teaches family members how to value their own independence. This example of life is a way of educating by example, showing that aging need not be a period of limitations, but of discoveries and self-sufficiency. Many seniors who have lived independently until the end of their lives are remembered by their strength and determination, and their descendants carry this lesson as an inspiration to their own lives. This emotional legacy strengthens family ties, as it shows that respect and care for health and autonomy are essential for a happy life. Leaving an emotional legacy also means contributing to a more positive view of old age, where the elderly are respected and admired for their choices. This example of dignity and autonomy is a gift that the elderly can leave, helping to build a culture of respect and appreciation of the elderly. This inheritance of independence and resilience is a teaching that perpetuates, showing that aging can be lived with pride and freedom. Many think of inheritance only as material goods, but the true inheritance we leave is the values and teachings we give our loved ones. For many elderly, the greatest legacy is the memory of a life lived with autonomy, courage, and dignity. This legacy of values represents a life lesson for children and grandchildren who learn the importance of taking care of themselves and to value freedom. This example is a gift that goes beyond any financial value, as it teaches the next generations to prioritize what really matters. Living a full life where independence and honesty are cultivated, it is a way to build a legacy that will endure. Instead of worrying only about the accumulation of goods, the elderly can focus on leaving an inheritance of memories and examples that inspire family members to value self-care and respect. This legacy of values provides an ethical and emotional basis that guides the descendants, showing that true success is in attitudes and character, not material possessions. This type of inheritance creates a lasting brand that strengthens the bond between generations. By offering this example of life, the elderly leave a message of love and wisdom, which transforms the way the family sees aging. This legacy of values is a way of teaching children and grandchildren how to value experiences, relationships, and freedom, ensuring that dignity and respect for life itself are always preserved. Support networks play an essential role in the lives of the elderly, providing a safety and protection structure that goes beyond the family circle. These networks may include friends, living groups, neighbors, and even specialized professionals who offer emotional and practical support. For many elderly, support networks become an extension of the family, offering company, comfort, and a sense of belonging that is critical to well-being. The presence of these networks relieves the weight of loneliness and allows the elderly to feel welcomed and valued, even in a phase where limitations begin to emerge. Participating in support networks provides the elderly a more active and healthy routine as they find activities that promote social life and strengthen mental health. These interactions, whether in reading clubs, walking groups, or weekly meetings, create friendship ties that help combat isolation and sadness. In integrating with a support network, the elderly gains the security of knowing that there are people who care and will be present in times of need. This constant support makes him preserve his independence and sense of dignity, knowing that he can count on a support structure that respects his choices. In addition, these support networks strengthen the emotional resilience of the elderly, allowing them to face the challenges of age with optimism and safety. With the support of a solidarity community, the elderly finds the motivation to stay active, engaged, and participative. These networks represent a way of preserving the quality of life in the elderly, providing the elderly an environment where it is valued and respected. When it has a solid support network, the elderly lives with more joy and self-sufficiency, knowing that in each phase they have around people who care about their well-being. The way we look at old age can leave a deep mark in future generations. Aging with dignity and independence is a powerful example that the elderly can leave to their children and grandchildren, showing that it is possible to face the challenges of age with courage and self-esteem. In living autonomously, remaining faithful to their values, and taking care of their own health, the elderly teach the importance of respect for themselves and the preservation of freedom. This legacy is an immaterial heritage that guides family members to face the future with determination and confidence. When the elderly demonstrate that it is possible to live in complete and authentic elderly, they inspire their families to value self-care and plan the future. Children and grandchildren learn that aging need not be a period of suffering or dependence, but a phase where dignity and personal fulfillment continue to be priorities. This example of resilience and self-awareness strengthens family ties and creates a culture of respect for the elderly, where the elderly are seen as sources of wisdom and inspiration. This legacy of dignity also represents a message of love for family members, who learn to value and respect the time and choices of the elderly. By showing that old age can be fully lived, the elderly transmit to their families an inheritance of values that reinforces the importance of freedom and self-sufficiency. This example of decent life is a gift that continues to inspire generations, creating a positive and healthy view of aging. The life experience accumulated by the elderly is a valuable treasure, and conveying this wisdom to the next generations is a way of preserving their lessons and values. Each story lived, each challenge overcome, and each achievement carried out carries a learning that can be shared with children and grandchildren. These teachings go far beyond practical advice, as they show how to deal with difficulties and how to live with integrity and purpose. Sharing this wisdom is a way of leaving a lasting brand, positively influencing the choices of future generations. The elderly, who are willing to share their experiences, create a legacy of knowledge that helps family members face life with more awareness and resilience. Upon hearing the stories and learning of the elders, young people understand that aging is a phase full of meanings and that each phase of life has its value. This exchange of experiments also reinforces the effective bond between generations, as you allow younger people to see the elderly as reference and inspirational figures that carry unique and valuable teachings. For the elderly, conveying their wisdom is a way of finding purpose and accomplishment in the elderly. This exchange enriches everyone's life, as it brings a sense of continuity and legacy that transcends time. In transmitting their values and teachings, the elderly contribute to a more conscious and empathic society, where respect for each other's history and achievements is valued. This shared wisdom represents one of the greatest gifts that older generations can offer, creating a cycle of learning and gratitude that strengthens the family and inspires next generations. Planning for old age is an essential decision for those who want to live this phase of life with fullness and self-sufficiency. Aging quality does not happen by chance. It is the result of conscious choices and preparation that begins in youth. Those who take care of their health, make savings, and make preventive decisions create a solid foundation to live independently and worthy. Planning the elderly is to take control of their own destination, ensuring that each moment be lived with freedom and purpose. This planning involves care with physical and mental health, financial safety, and the choice of an environment that allows a pleasant and stimulating routine. By organizing these aspects, the elderly avoid surprises and prepare to face the limitations of age with resilience. Investing in an emergency fund, adapted housing options, and leisure activities are ways to ensure that old age is lived without depending on third parties. Planning is, above all, an act of self-care and self-love, which guarantees to the elderly the possibility of living according to their own desires. The decision to prepare for old age is also a way of relieving children and grandchildren of the responsibility of taking care of parents, allowing each one to follow their own paths. This planning is therefore a way to preserve family ties and to build a full and decent old age. When planning now, the elderly creates the conditions to live their best version in old age, with health, freedom, and safety, showing that respect and care for themselves are the basis for a happy and accomplished life.